We are all going to die.
And there's no way of getting out of it.
But take a step back. As they say, use your time wisely.
Now, I'm not going to divulge too much into this. When it comes down to it,
The key is living in the moment.
we are all going to die. One day, one way or another, we will pass. What we hope happens to us, though, is whatever we wish to believe. There are endless possibilities of what could occur in the afterlife, if it even exists. One perspective, however, which is the one I have studied, is the Hindu perspective. In Hinduism, it is believed that life is a cycle. We are born, and then we die, and then we are reborn, and the cycle continues. My GreenStone project allowed me to explore the various Hindu ceremonies around death. My interest took me all the way to India, and as close to home as a conversation with my Balinese neighbors. My journey has been an attempt to understand the Hindu's perception of death and how this may affect the way a person lives. In Hinduism, it is believed that our bodies act as cages that carry our souls through life until death. Then our bodies die, and our souls are released like a bird from its cage. Where this unburdened soul travels, however, and whether it moves into the transcendent realm of moksha, is determined by one's karma. To understand moksha, one must understand the terms Atman, which is one's soul, one's life force, and Brahman, the ultimate reality. This is constant but cannot be described. Moksha occurs when the individual Atman merges with the cosmic Brahman. In Varanasi, India, Hindus believe that by being burned in this holy place, their souls can move straight into moksha. In Bali, this is different. The Balinese Hindus believe that they must spend each lifetime building good karma so that eventually they can move into the realm of moksha. The cycle of life and death is known as samsara. One can break or change this cycle of life and death with something known as karma. Karma is the sum of one's actions, good and bad, that determine the condition of their future lives. When I first set out on my project, my aim was to understand the differences between the way Hinduism was practiced in Bali and in India. I soon realized, however, that Hinduism was innate to India, and that Bali had a unique version of it. Balinese religion is like a synthesis of religions that have come here over time. One of the major differences between the way Hinduism is practiced in India and in Bali is karma. Hindu Indians believe that by bathing in the Ganges River, their souls can be cleansed of all bad karma and they can move into the realm of moksha. In Bali, this takes lifetimes of practice to work back your good karma in order to eventually ascend. The different perspectives on the attainment of good karma I have observed may encourage the average Balinese to focus more on their karmic practice. This is not to say that the practices in India are not focused as well. In fact, practicing sadhus and yogis are probably the most focused people I have encountered. However, their practice is more centered around self-discovery and creating a direct connection to Brahman than generating good karma. There are 3 different types of karma. The first type of karma is karma that is generated in this life. This karma is also known as instant karma. We use it amongst our friends a lot. If you give me a bite of your food, you'll have really great karma. The second type of karma is karma that's generated in this life that will affect you in future lives to come. The third type of karma is the store of karma that has not yet happened. It was generated in a previous life, but has not affected you in this one. It is hard to explain what karma is. It's not a math equation, and it isn't always a case of action and reaction. It can be described as a state of mind. In a book I read about the Balinese perception of death, it was stated that the Balinese do not do good deeds to gain good karma. They simply behave appropriately. What intrigues me the most out of the many Hindu rituals is cremation. Cremation is the ceremony for the dead and assisting the soul to move on to moksha or to the next life. In India, much like Bali, when someone dies, they are cremated. Cremation is the burning of a body after death. To non-Hindus, the burning of bodies may at first appear a terrifying thing, but once an understanding of the practice has been established, the fear should fade. It is believed that when we are living, our souls are attached to our bodies, and as I explained before, the body is really just a vehicle that carries the soul through from life to life. Once the physical form has been burned, it is believed that the soul is then free to move into other vehicles by reincarnation, or to moksha, depending on one's level of good and bad karma. In order to grasp the entirety of this ritual, my mother and I traveled to Varanasi, India. Varanasi is the holiest city in India, and this is because it is known to be the birthplace of Shiva. It is the city of death. It sounds like a dark and dreadful place, but my experience was quite the opposite. When we arrived after a 23-hour train ride, the station and city were packed with homeless sleepers and bartering children. But this was not unlike any station in India. When we strolled away from the city to the water's edge of the Ganges River, I was amazed by its serenity. It's my mom and I when we went to India. And this is Varanasi, birthplace of Shiva. When we strolled away from the city to the water's edge of the Ganges River, I was amazed by its serenity. Down at the ghat where the cremation fires were burned, everything was calm. People were quiet and things moved slowly. People were bathing, chanting, talking, meditating. Bodies were burned and ashes fell into the water, yet there was a harmony amidst it all. One afternoon, my mother and I were exploring the city streets. The air was filled with the repetitive sound of Ram. Men carried bodies wrapped in gold cloth down to the burning god as they chanted. This continued throughout the day. Death was everywhere, and people were so accustomed to it. Similarly, in Bali, you have probably seen cremation processions or gatherings around burial grounds on the side of the road. We've all witnessed the death of somebody else. In both of these places, I have observed that death is just a part of life. This seems to make the concept of death and the ending of things more realistic. Death is constantly around us, and a lot of us choose to shut it out. It is affiliated with the end, sadness, maybe even loss of control, and we choose not to think about it because we don't want to accept it. In Hinduism, however, it is accepted from the moment a child can comprehend. Death is just one aspect of the continuous life cycle samsara. The acknowledgement is made on a day-to-day basis that death is a certainty and not something to fear. My cousin Luke died a few months ago. His death was sudden and none of us saw it coming. The reality that he is dead is just as shocking now as it was the evening I found out. It is strange to believe that the Luke I knew, is not alive anymore. His death caused all of my families and relatives much sadness. His things were packed and tears were shed. And as I was leaving the airport after dropping my parents off as they left to Cambodia to see his body, I conversed with my Balinese driver. As the conversation began to flow around Luke, he said something to me that really stuck. Luke was a true person. He was interested and content. He had dreams to fulfill, and while he may have been thinking much about the life ahead of him, he was still very present. Luke had good karma. He was close to God. To die so suddenly with the ease that he did is an honor. This perspective, this honest acceptance of death by him was extremely insightful. Despite grieving, the fact that he could have this outlook on death was humbling. The Balinese have accepted death. They recognize it. They live it. Their ceremonies practice it. Everything is built around balance. Everyone is sensitive to change. Every day when the Balinese lay out offerings, they are giving thanks. They are giving thanks to both good and bad spirits for keeping the balance. They give thanks to the good spirits because if there were more bad spirits than good, there would be complete chaos. But they similarly give offerings to the good spirits, the bad spirits, because they believe that if there is more good than bad, then there would be no change. The Balinese, in Bali, change is recognized and it's valued. I admire so many of the perspectives that I have learned through this process. However, there are 2 lessons I want to share with you as I wrap up my GreenStone. The first is change. The thing I have learned and want to integrate into my life is the Balinese concept that change is inevitable, not easy, but valued. The process of life should not be easy. Bumps in the road, boulders In the river, hardships are valued just as much as the easygoings and the breaks in life. Everything is changing, and change is a must. The second is balance. The amount of happiness and sadness is equal in the world. They balance. 1 month and 7 days is the time set out for grieving in Bali. During this time, one is not supposed to enter a temple because their mind is not so clear. But after this period of time, they start going back to the temple. The community is built around this continuous process of ceremonies and cremations. One does not have time to sit in their own world of depression and sadness. They have 1 month and 7 days. After that, they move forward with grief and they go back to the temple. I appreciate this perspective. And I have tried to apply it in my experience of losing Luke. Nothing ever ends. In Hindu philosophy, it is believed that the world is unreal. By unreal is meant illusory, very much like a dream, which has its own subjective reality, but which is illusory compared with the waking state. This specific belief is one I ponder on a regular basis. I think about death often, but not in a depressive way where life is suffering and there's no point to it. I think about death with a sense of wonder. What happens when we take our last breath? What happens when our hearts stop beating and our blood stops flowing? Do we fall asleep and never wake up? Do our souls travel through space and time, never to return to this earth? Does our conscience remain as we enter different realms and dimensions? Do we wake up from a long dream that we've only been sitting in for a few moments? Or do we reincarnate and travel into new life forces on this earth? The endless options are what intrigue me. The not knowing makes my mind spin.